Look at that.
Oh yeah, I'm mirroring it from my iPad to the system. So, and that's on Apple TV.
Perfect. All right, guys, we are actually live. Everybody, welcome real quick with Unlocking AV with Mike T. So everybody's going to take a moment here, introduce themselves. I'll start off real quick. My name is Scott Craig. I am the Northern National Sales Manager for KeyDigital.
Okay.
And we have...
I'm Mike Sinberg. I'm CEO and President of KeyDigital.
I'm Butch Thomas, Stephen Thomas, either one you want to call me, depending on the day. I own a company called Virtuous Systems in Westchester, New York, and we do technology stuff, and I'm glad to be here.
Which I couldn't tell you were from New York with that accent. I'm Jason Knott. I am the Chief Content Officer at CE Pro. Been with CE Pro for 20 years, and I also oversee our commercial integrator publication and our security sales and integration publication. So covering the security side and the commercial AV side. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me, guys.
Indeed, glad to be here.
We're
So
happy to have you.
Can we go back to our initial topic, please? 8K, 4K.
You go right to the most sexiest topic. Okay,
yeah, right.
good.
We got to get into it because everything is about the point. There's everything else in between. Let's just get right to where we got to go. But you're right when it comes down to 8K and 4K and actually deploying it, because I just did an installation down in the city. Okay, beautiful layout. Actually, I'll show you some images in a few if I have them. But basically, being that a lot of restaurants are closed in the city, and then we'll get right back to differences. Everything's outside. So there's a barge built outside of wood, looks great. I lined it up with 10 televisions all outside, all using KeyDigital balance. Okay, that's in the first part. They're all just regular HD balance. So just the reliability of the product is one thing. But these people come outside to watch television, okay, at a restaurant to watch a football game, and they don't care if it's 4K. They don't care if it's 8K. They care that there's something on the screen that they can see. And I'm telling you right now, just in that scenario, they sell out banquettes for $250 for someone to sit outside to eat chicken wings and watch a football game. And it's all on a KeyDigital HD 1080, excuse me, but it is 4K capable. Let me get it there. Let me just make sure that at least I'm not signing off on 8K, 4K, but the point is the capability is there. However, people that are in a scenario where they need to see something on the screen are completely fine with something 1080. And 1080 is just to make it work. 4K is to make an impression. 8K, we might as well go to NASA, because what's the point? You know, like what are we doing now? I mean, even though, you know, this stuff I'm doing here, screen mirroring and just putting it up on a screen, this is because how simple the deployment is of HD over IP. Whether you want 1080, whether you want 4K, what are you deploying? And the functionality. But that's between 8K, 4K, it's a matter of preference. But back to the switch concept in terms of why people want to deploy there. Do we have to attach their own?
Let's get everybody else on. Jason, what do you think about 8K, 4K?
Well, I'm curious to see where you stand, but it's interesting talking to integrators. Butch is right to a certain extent. What I'm finding from integrators is that they are absolutely showing 8K displays, but the reason they're doing it is because it's enabling them to sell more 4K displays, because the customer is seeing, I don't know if the customer can see the difference. There's no content, obviously. They're just running some internal piece from Samsung or whomever. Yeah. But they juxtapose the 8K with this enormous price point next to the 4K, and the customer then has no qualms about spending on a 4K set. Right. But you know, where do you think 8K is? And is 8K even there yet, Mike?
Well, I think I was there. Jason, you was there on the whole situation. You know, I remember 480i, right? There was 480p was shown. There was an improvement, and 1080i 720p was shown. Yeah, we can see a really good improvement. But then the manufacturers run so fast to change the resolution so fast that it becomes a blur. And even 4K, they already had a little bit of a trouble to demonstrate big difference between 1080p and 4K. The density of pixels is so great, especially if you're standing, like 3, 4, 5 picture heights from the display. It's very hard to see, even for people like us who basically do it all our lives, and we can zoom in on a small 3-pixel detail and distinguish the difference. But I think for regular consumer, it becomes a saturation point. I think it's somewhere after 1080p. The 4K is very close. I think 8K is even closer. So I think as far as the overall impression on overall business, I think 8K is reached a saturation point with our Retina being able actually distinguish it for real time, real view television. I'm sure when you say sitting next to the monitor and you're doing CAD drawings and it's a huge monitor and your nose is 2 inches away from the screen and you can see 2 pixels, 3 pixels apart, I'm sure you can appreciate a little bit difference between, let's say, 1080p to 4K. But I think for television, for AV, I don't know how is possible to actually sell now 8K. I mean, except the sexual number. I mean, it's very sexy. It's more than 8 is more than 4, right? 16 is more than 8, and 32 is more than 4. You can throw these numbers all day long, but I think what you, Jason, said, the way they're selling it, it just demonstrates that it's very hard to actually sell it right now. And if it comes for free, same price as 4K, people will say, okay, more pixels, great. But if the price tag is there, even small one, there will be a big question, especially, I don't know, Butch, what do you think? But I think for commercial applications, as you show, in the bars and restaurants, in the houses of worship, in the corporate rooms, I think the overall functionality, ease of use, 1080p like performance, I think does it. That's what I hear all day long.
And just to stay on that path, the answer is yes, as long as it works for them. And nobody has become addicted to having 4K. It's a matter of having a signal on the screen. And as long as you can see that signal, just like you was talking about pixelation when it gets too big at 480 and going up to 10, but no, the thing is, as long as it's a real, a quality image, of course, but able to work every single time you touch the button. And I'm always going back to that in terms of KeyDigital for me, because you guys you might have an idea of a club that's constantly playing loud music, and hundreds of people before COVID, thousands of people used to come in and for a huge fight, UFC fight, whatever it is, and then the TV stops working 5 minutes before.
Yeah. It's like the whole trend, though. Everything that we come out with, there always seems to be the delay on the software behind it. Okay, so right now, I mean, they're kind of pretty good right now between streaming media and everything else. 4K. We're buying a more expensive DVD player, but that's kind of going by the wayside. It's weird because we've all been watching bad television apparently for years.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure if we had a little 13-inch TV in black and white, that picture would be insane between the look and the contrast and everything else.
Black and white.
We're at that level with the 8K. I've been doing a little bit of research on the back end of Sony PlayStation 5. Okay, so that's supposedly going to be able to output 8K, but it's native. It's going to be 4K.
So how? I don't want to interject. Stay on that course, but you just said something that struck a lightning bolt in me. And if we could compare 8K television to black and white television for HD or 1080 or however you want to call it, if I tell that to one of my clients, right, that 8K, this system is so amazing, it's going to make everything else look like it's black and white. We got to be able to prove that. Because in most scenarios, you cannot tell. No. That's right. That's what I said. But to make that analogy true, how can we tell a black and white image the way that to build that? How do we do that? I would love to do it. I'm ready.
Well,
It's marketing, and it does drive me nuts. I mean,
yeah, two things it reminds me of is I remember 15 years ago or 20 years ago, Mark Cuban, when he was doing HDNet,
Right.
and he came and spoke at
Yep.
the Para conference, and somebody asked him why he chose HDNet at 1080p versus 720, and he said it's a bigger number.
Right.
That's it, because it's
Bob.
all marketing. He goes, it's all marketing. And one other thing I find interesting is you see some of the media server products that are out, and just take a look at the difference between like Kaleidoscape and this red carpet home cinema. Red carpet home cinema is targeting this 1% of the 1%, the Bel Air circuit.
Yep.
You know, these are people who pay $2,000 to watch a first run movie the day it comes out within the same day it comes out. You can watch it twice for $2,000. It's not 4K because he knows the customers don't care. They don't know. So it's not 4K.
When we were developing DVD format with Warner Brothers, I experienced the same situation. The people, they put out one of the first titles they want to do in DVD was Blade Runner. I don't know if you remember that.
Yep.
Blade Runner,
Of course.
was a very famous
Kind of a classic.
sci-fi flick. There's no resolution in that picture at all, you know, but there's a lot of dark gray and very, very floor noisy scenes, and that what counts in the movies, you know, in the darkened scenario, you know, the contrast ratio, the color gamma, the saturation. This is, I think, comes way above the resolution, the colorimetry of the picture, the contrast ratio, and the overall brightness depends on your condition. I think it's first that actually shocks your eyes if we are in the correct technical terms. Now, every time I saw display makers go to high resolution, first they add pixels, it's marketing, but second, they all sacrifice contrast ratio first, and colorimetry and noise, and all. So they making a very flat 8-bit displays that looks much worse than the 1080p displays that have a really rich saturation and contrast ratio, but they can put 8K number on OSD, and you know they try to sell it. That's how it works. So in reality, if you look at the 8K displays now and all 8K technology, I think it's step back before it's step forward. And I think the content providers, if they come out with a lot of rich content, then it will maybe, and displays will match it. And the HDR now is very good. You know,
Yeah.
I every time I see HDR, I can see a big difference on any resolution display. So if they don't support a really good HDR with 8K, I think it's dead. I think HDR is far more powerful now than resolution. So there's so many parameters will lead to that success that I think, plus the additional problem, like all of us notice, that the higher resolution we go, the less impact is on our viewer. We just basically have a very hard time to see it. So I think 8K has a big mountain to climb to become really viable, widespread. But we'll see. You know, the C industry surprised us before.
It set it back, the fact that the Olympics didn't happen this summer. And remember, those were going to be in 8K.
Right.
And I think that, you know, there's always kind of a spillover effect when something like that happens. So I think that hurt it back. But now at the same time, we have all these people investing in their homes from a home standpoint. You know, I heard a number the other day, the travel and tourism industry in the U.S. is $750 billion a year. And almost the big chunk of that is not being spent. People are not going anywhere. And that money is transferring, and a great deal of that money is transferring to upgrades in their home for various reasons, work from home environments. But I think entertainment has been pushed to the forefront, and remodeling is through the roof right now too. So it'll be interesting to see when 8K comes out, if there's still, the economy is still chugging along, and there's still appetite from the luxury standpoint, if people are willing to invest in that next level product for 8K. But so it's kind of a competing interest to the fact that there's no content out there right now.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Like before, you were talking about Kaleidoscape and red carpet and everything else. You laugh. Like the four of us, I would consider above average. But how many of your friends go and they have that brand new TV, keeping up with the Joneses, they're bragging. And you and I know when they're watching cable, the maximum output of their cable box is 1080i. So the TV's doing all the work to give them that 4K number. So it's the marketing behind it. I'm not bashing it. It's great. We've seen a bunch of different stuff. And then when, 4K DVDs started coming out, I thought for sure it was going to be Fifth Element was going to be the first movie to be released. But it's come further. But the marketing aspect is insane. And like you said, people running now, they're spending more time at home and then trapped in their homes for 3 months. And they're like, wow, my TV stinks, my audio stinks. I'm sure the four of us right now, if we tried to run out and go to Best Buy, we wouldn't be able to get an AV receiver. We wouldn't be able to get a TV.
No.
We'll probably find something for our Wi-Fi.
Well,
we can't even supply the demand.
That's correct.
Absolutely. It's crazy. I know I'm going to try to loop it back around again real quick. Part of the original conversation was Twisted Pair and the evolution of that. Other than this is a topic I'm sure we could talk for hours on.
Well, yeah, let's let it go because you're right. Like me, when I go to Best Buy or when I go to Annex or when I go to and any of my vendors, everything is sold out.
Yeah.
And even Sonos, forget about it. It's a wait list for it. And the thing is, it is a real thing right this minute. And being that the immediate generic stuff that's off the shelf, right, that usually is in stock, is not there because people just need stuff that works. And that stuff works for whatever it is, whether they're hanging it from a tree, whether they're just putting it in a box on a shelf to turn something on, it just works. The thing is now just taking the simplicity of the IP systems and how really simple it is to snap it in with half the hardware, way half in hardware. You don't even need a huge closet anymore.
Yeah.
A nice rack with some ventilation and some grounded power, you are golden. And to get that out there, because as I deploy these systems, so knowing what it takes to run the cable first, get through a hole in the brick, and then down into the basement through the cement, whatever it is, that when it's Ethernet driven, especially Cat 6 and updated now, you're good to go. And there's no way it's just even run a coax again or any of that. And just FYI, there's some work that's going to be happening around here. Just if it gets too loud. No, because I'm in a restaurant, things are happening. The partner, he's coming to do his thing. Just we're here. But even with that said, the deployment of this IP system is the only thing that really, really, really works. And
you were doing matrix switches before, right? Like everybody.
Absolutely.
Yes. How did you switch to IP? What was your driving
functionality? It depends on the end user and the customer and what it is that I'm telling them that they can do. So, and they take my word for it, especially when it comes down to display systems. If Butch says it, all right, Butch, you build it. And that's what I do. Butch builds everything.
So what key functionality have been distinguishing IP versus like a regular matrix?
Well, the deployment of it, because even if we were doing an HD matrix, the wiring is still the same. It's one for one,
right?
No matter which way you look at it. The only thing in this scenario here, instead of going from balun to balun, you're going from balun to switch. Done. Or go to the closest switch. I haven't jumped a gateway or jumped a switch yet from switch to switch on HD over IP. I've only been doing the from balun to switch. So I do want to test it that way later at a distance and just verify, what it would be, because I haven't done that yet. But just to throw this out there really quick, you guys see this? Right? This is down in the city.
Oh wow!
Right, and just getting right to it. You see the KeyDigital. Hello.
Right.
Everything all the way through, and this is what the TVs look like in overall.
Wow. So this is all open space, but with digital signage.
Well, it's television. They're there to watch football.
Wow.
Right on the street.
Nice.
And looks good.
What street is it?
It's on 11th Street and 3rd Avenue. There's a club. As a matter of fact, it was just back there in the background. Hold on.
Which is a great segue of what the ability of doing stuff over Twisted Pair, having that infrastructure in somebody's house, you know what I mean, or running that infrastructure. And I always call it nickels and dimes, because it's like, hey, you're running one CAD, hey, run another one. It's going to cost you a nickel, to get it out there. Right. So, black box technology over twisted pair, and we just need to get something from A to B. And one thing I wanted to note real quick, when you mentioned Sonos before, not to go off on a tangent, but now Nest has its own streaming. I just read an article this morning. So Nest now, from a thermostat level, has got into the streaming media and streaming music.
Hold on, because Nest, just to put it out there, Nest is a very, very good product, and it works. So if they put out something, just knowing the name Nest and you compare it to Sonos, like just having those in the same conversation gives the level of interest now to me, because I absolutely love Nest.
Well, you're seeing other companies join it, being that everyone's having a hard time filling the demand. There's all kinds of pop-ups right now.
Well, yeah. And I'll tell you right now, as a matter of fact, just really quick, I'm just going to do it. Which network am I on? Here.
Well, Nest just blew in my house, one Nest. I have to replace it with Honeywell.
Oh, that's different.
Jason, you also saw a matrix to IP transition, right? Did you see it?
Yeah.
What do you think was driving behind it?
I think I think people were a little bit intimidated. And again, I'm just going to throw this out. We've always had an extreme labor issue going on in the industry for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when integrators are bringing in fresh young technicians and they're looking at the back of a matrix switcher versus what they can do with a simple AV over IP plugin, it's less intimidating and easier to train. It sounds awkward because you're into the IP element, but and then I think also the ability to save that real estate, that rack real estate space from the giant switch is attractive to people. But no, the trend has absolutely been there. So let me ask you, Mike, you kind of were running through this progression of what's happened, to get to the AV over IP, where we are now over twisted pair. What's next? Is fiber the logical next step, or is there something beyond that you think is going to happen next?
No, I think if you see trends in the industry, the reason why AV over IP became a success is because the compression technology became unaffordable and mainstream. The chips that do a really good job compressing baseband uncompressed video into, let's say, 1G type of bandwidth is within reach. They're not expensive. They work really well. And when that became more and more available, then AV over IP become enabled. So this is the key enablement here. Now, people always say, oh, bigger number, and we all hear this, 1G, 10G. But what I hear is that it's very, 10G's switches are available, of course, but they are much more expensive and they're much more flaky. It's not a commodity products yet. It's still just a few key manufacturers doing it. And they cannot be grown to the very big switch because the internal bandwidth of 10G switches is just enormous, in order to make it work. So I think the way the industry moved, they moved through compression mostly. So I think that next generation will be more and more better technologies, better compression technologies used in order to use and send higher quality pictures over same bandwidth. 10G, 1G was driven by IP networks. 1G was actually needed way beyond reasons of video, for basic infrastructure. If the same pressure will come, AV will not drive 10G. The internet, the Ethernet, I think the in-house infrastructure will drive. If that 10G becomes as commoditized and as price effective as 1G, then you will see more and more AV/RP jumping in, but I don't think they'll do baseband. I think this is kind of a backwards. I think better and better compression will be used to send images through a network. So I think compression technology comes first. I would even predict right now there is a new initiative, Jason. I don't know if you heard or not. MPAI, the artificial intelligence, motion picture artificial intelligence initiative. It's chaired by the same guy who chaired MPEG-2, Leonardo, and we're now part of the team, KeyDigital, and they're looking into next generation compression technology where artificial intelligence used to compress. That is what our eye does. This is kind of a recognizing patterns, and instead of sending pixel by pixel or all the math of truncating, the MPAI, the artificial intelligence compression, will recognize it and send objects and its description, which takes very little space, but on the other end, it will come out perfect, because it will be really high quality. I think compression technology is always, I think, comes first. So I would say, to answer your question, what's next? I would predict that when compression will come down in price and becomes more commoditized, and more people will invest in chips, and it's always easier to invest in chips than redo the whole infrastructure, switches and networks to the higher bandwidth. This will sort of drive, in my opinion, AV/IP, higher and higher, better and better compression. For example, good quality HDR. I don't know, 4K is a good idea, but yeah, it could be 4K, 1080p, 4K, HDR, and also real time lip sync. Lip sync is an issue, right? When you have the MPEG-4 H.264 type compression, which does reasonably good job, but it puts a very long delay between enter and end. So for real-time setups like Butch is doing, when you have real-time images coming through plus a camera somewhere, you cannot have a lot of lip sync. It's not really works well. It has to be like in a big auditorium setting when the speaker speaks and the monitors in the back. The monitors in the back cannot be 400 milliseconds behind the speaker. Everybody will hear there's something wrong. So the compression for this kind of AV/IP setups will drive two things: higher quality, real time, means less delay, more higher quality through the same network. This is kind of my opinion.
Yes, you are completely on the nuclear bomb button when it comes down to compression, because right now we're talking about doing it over twisted pair Ethernet, and it's always been done. And then you mentioned, is the next level going to be fiber, which is always going to be the next level until something else comes, but something else is already here, and it's wireless. So if the compression is right, I know. See, I saw your face. I know. I hate wireless transmission. Believe me, I hate it. I do. I don't want it unless we get the compression you're talking about to do it over wireless with the right gear, and then.
Butch, when you put wireless in this bar that you just shown me, and if all your monitor and source is wirelessly connected there, I think you're going to be there every day fixing problems.
You are right.
What compression you use.
No, but hold on. You're right. You are 1,000% right.
It's only one drunk guy from middle of country to come there and destroy all.
Yeah, and you're right. And then I'm down on a Saturday night and nobody can have a good time because the TVs don't work. You're right. We can't rely on it currently. However, in 15 years from now, or even 3, right? If that compression is a real thing and you put it on the right infrastructure that's talking to your PoE, right? I'm just throwing it. I'm not saying it's here, because it's not. We test this stuff. We know it's not here. It's not a real thing, but it's gonna come.
Well, actually, it's a very, very nice, interesting topic you touched, and I can sort of touch on this. One reason we selected digital transmission for what is now what is it? ATV, ATSC. The original, transmission standard for high definition, ATSC.
Okay.
One reason we selected digital for that is because I had an idea, and I felt and I heard that some military missiles guidance, in order for them to get through a very noisy and very, like when the enemy sends a lot of signals to
scramble, right?
Scramble the incoming missile or scramble its control. One way they avoided this is to use a very sophisticated digital transmission technology, because digital transmission can find a way to connect in a very noisy environment. And the reason we were looking for that is because we were giving a task by FCC to create a create a high definition transmission channel inside what was NTSC there, then a very noisy analog system with high power transmitters blasting, and they didn't want to disconnect them all. They want to create a digital, not digital, they want to create a system that will lie low but connect and don't disrupt. And I was looking to that saying, wait a second, this is what military does with those guidance systems. So that's how the digital idea came here. I sort of proposed to use digital transmission for high definition there to be able to work inside analog channels. Now, and that's how the whole digital thing rolled out. So Butch, to answer your question, in the commercial space, in order to you can make a reliable digital connectivity, but believe me, it's not cheap. It's extremely sophisticated in order to make it really reliable. What you see as Wi-Fi today, blah, 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 it's all for consumer in his home. When connection drops, he goes, resets the router, or blah, 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 that works. But the commercial setting, like you were sitting there with a 24/7, 100% performance requirement, current Wi-Fi will not make it. It has to be something else. So if somebody invests in a really, really robust digital wireless connectivity, that on the order of what they doing or were doing with missiles 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that will make a reliable wireless. And maybe that will something that at one point will say, no, it's worked so well, we don't need, and it's cheap enough, we don't need wires. But it's not there yet. Nobody made an investment, and it's good enough for consumer right now. So I don't know how, and a commercial market is smaller than consumer market. So I don't know who and when people invest money to make a really unbelievably robust digital, wireless connectivity for large commercial stuff. Because you need, right now you have what, 4, like 8 displays there, I see, or 10 displays in this establishment right now in this bar. How many displays?
There's 6, there's 10 up here, and then there's another 6 in the back, and there's 2 upstairs, there's 2 in the dining room. There's about 24 displays in this whole place.
And how many sources?
I have 6 inputs.
So you have 24 and says you have 30 wireless links.
No.
That
No.
don't interfere with each other.
No. You just asked about the displays, not, and sorry, maybe I'm not answering it right, but in terms of what's connected to the IP, it's only 2 video walls. So it's only okay. 2 by 2. It's not, so it's only 12.
Let's say this restaurant came to you and said, please set up for us 6 by 24 system, which is not unusual for sports bars.
Right.
And you'll say, okay, I'll use wireless. And when you use wireless, you're gonna have 30 networks running in this small room. Now, 30 networks, I don't know if you ever went on the show. When I go on right now the show is not present. When I go to CEDIA or Infocom with hundreds of networks blasting, even Wi-Fi, even our airports fail. They don't connect.
Yeah.
Nothing connects. No matter what you do, the spectrum is so damn crowded that nothing works. So this is kind of a thing that wireless has to overcome. So this is a very good question, I think.
I want to hold on.
I want to be predicted in future, but I think if technology exists, and if somebody will take the time and money to invest and make it extremely reliable, yeah, maybe. But
hold on.
State of the art, I don't think so.
Yeah, one of the perfect analogies, Mike, is I kid around with some of our customers and dealers and say, hey, they're like, hey, what's your wireless solution? I was like, you know what? I was like, wireless is like cell phones. We all drop calls like the best of them. I don't care who your carrier is. I was like, do you want to be in that environment or that application and try to do something wirelessly? With the over IP and twisted pair. you know, the expandability is probably the number one, where I've seen a lot of dealers like Butch and other people that are like, hey, as long as I don't have the hood welded shut and I have a 24 port switch and they're going to come back to me, you know, in a month, like I try to get guys, I'm like, hey, you know, a couple extra bucks, throw a 48 port in there. When they come back to you and say, this is great, we're going to expand to the east over here, put another 6 displays, you're going back to the client and saying, hey, I just need eight decoders to add on here. I'm not saying I'm going to charge you another $1,000 for a switch and everything else. So I'd probably say my number one, not to get off track, for AV over IP with dealers was expandability.
So
To be able to expand.
I want to jump in and just really interject, because I was listening when I had walked outside, because I want to go back to hardware really quick in terms of wireless, even though we're not doing it, it's hypothetical, but we're on the topic and my stomach is telling me to go here. So this right here is an access point from Meraki. It's called an MR56, I believe. Yes, MR56. This right here, okay, in any wireless environment, you could be at the CES show, you could be at whatever you want. I would love to absolutely deploy this and test it in that environment, or a golf field or football field or an emergency deployment, whatever it is. The way that I trust and put my signature on KeyDigital is the same way I trust to put my signature on these type of APs, because I've done deployments where every single television is only running off of the internal software app to run YouTube TV. No cable box, just
and this
internet.
Is what, this is a router you talking about?
This is an access point. This is what goes out to each location wherever we are, and this thing could support well over 100 connections at one time. Now, when you have that type of hardware that you can't get off the shelf, because I tried the off the shelf stuff, you get 3 to maybe 8 concurrent connections before you get to 100.
How much bandwidth it supports?
I don't know yet until we touch it. I just got this in the mail yesterday because I've been waiting for it.
But
because
you're using it.
I'm going to be deploying this. I have 3 more in the car, brand new, ready to go.
Okay, so here's one of the kicker here. This one is you're probably using wireless connectivity of the TV to connect to a. You're using this as a hardwired to TV, or you use this in order to provide wireless connectivity to TV?
Wireless connectivity to not only just the TVs, but also iPads, printers that are connected.
You use a wireless connection from TV to this access point, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Only.
So the bandwidth here, in order for you to support a broadcasting or streaming channel in H.265, the bandwidth there is between 10, 20, 40 megabits per second. It doesn't go to 1 gig.
No.
Okay. So if you set up a commercial environment with your own sources and displays, and you want them to have being real time, this will not work.
No.
Okay.
No.
This is only distribution of broadcasting content.
Correct.
Okay.
But
it has its own application.
Yes.
And you need to use a distribution of wireless of broadcasting content. And even then, it's like, it's interesting for us to know how many of these TVs, all wirelessly, you can support in one room without they calling you at least every other day. Let's say if they're calling you once a week. They call you once a week, I think it's a victory. Because once a week, you need a free drink. Every day, you cannot have a free drink.
No, you're right. Exactly. If it's every day, the system doesn't work. You're right. So yeah, Scott.
I was going to say, not to get off topic, but one thing I don't want to forget is when we were talking prior to, and I know we've been kind of jumping around, is Jason brought up a good point. And this kind of works into the noise factor and everything else. Jason had mentioned about going onto somebody else's network. You know what I mean? Like in the example that you're at right there is you have POS, everything on somebody's network. And now we're talking noise factor. We have people take, host this with an iPad, either putting in a drink menu or a self-serve kiosk or anything like that. But I just wanted to make sure that we didn't miss that point because.
Yeah, so Butch, I'd love to hear your perspective on that. So, one of the things I hear from integrators is, and I was mentioning it before we started the call, is the biggest hurdle that they run into on AV over IP is the customer, the end user customer, especially in a commercial environment, allowing them to connect to their existing network. So how do you handle that? What is it? Is it how do you maintain that you're not going to hurt their existing network, or are you setting up some sort of separate VLAN, or what do? You communicate specifically with their IT person? How do you go over that, surpass that hurdle?
In most scenarios, yes, the very, very most crucial and important person in this scenario is the IT person who put it in and who understands it and who relies on it. And then you take them by the hand, and then you get them some coffee, and then you buy them lunch, and you make them feel real good in understanding that when we plug in this cable and we plug in that cable, nothing's gonna happen except for these two TVs are gonna work, and you can go back to bed because there's no hurt here. So the thing is, it's crucial that you talk to their IT, but let them see it, let them touch it. Do it 12 o'clock at night when nobody's in the office. It's not going to break your system unless your system can't support it. You need a real engine in your switch. And if you don't have it, or if you're not confident in your switch, no problem. We don't have to touch that. We'll put our switch right here. And all it's gonna do is exactly what we tell it to do.
I think one of the other things that I hear is the end user customer is worried about a breach. You look at the Target situation that happened a few years back, and that breach at Target came through the thermostat. The thermostat was put on the Target network, and the hackers got in through that means. So I think that's that could be one of the other fears that bubbles up with that customer.
I'll tell you what, and until I have any friends that can hack into a thermostat to get inside of Target's network, I mean, it's amazing the fact that somebody can do that in the first place. We're over here talking about figuring out Wi-Fi over HD, and somebody's logging into Target systems over a thermostat.
Well,
Yeah.
one thing about
Really?
AV over IP, that AV over IP boxes are basic compression engines that flood the data stream with a lot of compressed data from one point to another. They don't really have any intelligence to go and check somebody else on that network. I don't know if they probably least amount of least pretenders to be bridgers into the network.
Right, that's
Because
heavy.
when you log into them, you set up basically connectivity from one box to another, maybe some parameters for video, audio, and that's it. So there's no real bridge between them and the network. There's no intelligence in them to good enough to actually go and explore.
Yeah, or just put an access point on the switch and completely segment it from the network. It doesn't have to be online. That's what I do. I have my own access point that's powered by the same PoE, sending out its own signal, and all I have to do is attach to it. It has nothing to do with anything else. It's completely disconnected. It's its own system.
That seems to be the most common, is when everyone sets up their own network, everyone's happy across the board.
Yeah.
Because we do not have to look out. When the encoders and decoders are on the same network, they're all communicating together. We don't need an outboard internet connection. And I'll shamelessly plug our compass control. And we were talking about this earlier. There's only one time that we go out and look on the internet to register a license for an iPad, an iOS device. But you could do that, Butch, within seconds. Register the license and be done. But that is a big thing, Jason. I mean, I've seen, I got a lot of guys in Virginia, Maryland, and everything else in my territory, and they're implementing these items. And right away, when they say, you got to go on the network, they just shut it right down. They're like, not an option. But then through education and training, and we say, hey, you know what? We could just have a switch. It doesn't need to be hooked out to your outside LAN. It just needs to all talk together. And here's my hub and my gateway.
One other comment I wanted to make, Mike. I like that you said that real-time compression was going to be kind of the future. And I remember last year when or maybe it was 2 years ago now, time flies, that they legalized gambling in all the states. And one of the big deals was that you would be able to go into a sports bar and bet if Tiger Woods is going to make that putt. So you could place a bet as he's lining up the putt instantaneously, and the gambling industry is really pushing for that real-time element, especially for sports bars. You can bet on the next play that the Patriots are going to run. Is it going to be a run or a pass? And you place the bet instantaneously within like a 15-second time frame of the play taking place. And sports bars are going to be, I think, really pushing for that real-time element, because gambling is going to push into sports bars big time.
So you think that gambling element, the half a second delay that current systems provide for low bandwidth communication is a hurdle?
I don't know. I would think that if I'm a gambler, I'm going to want to know what kind of delay is or isn't happening in that system before I start placing bets. So I think that sports bars are going to promote the speed of their network and the real-time element of their network in order to be able to have these gambling kiosks or websites or apps or whatever it is work within their location. So it's going to be interesting.
In this, as I understand, this application is not inside one network, right? It's could be long distance application when camera is 1,000 miles away from where the betting takes place, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I could be sitting in a sports bar in Vegas betting on Tiger Woods' putt at the Masters in Georgia.
I think this is amazing application for real time, short delay compression, and low bandwidth. It has to be low bandwidth to go on internet. So
that's when
20 megabits or less.
That's when all these things are going to become a household name. Is real time, low bandwidth, where people will be like, oh, Billy's up the street. They've got real time, low bandwidth. Let's go place our bets there. And that's going to be a marketing.
Honest with you, the only technology I can see that can do it is AI, because current JPEG, which is reasonably real time, it's like 20 milliseconds, is definitely within. Human cannot really differentiate that kind of delay. That requires significant bandwidth. For even 4K requires 1 gig. 1 gig is impossible to have a reliable large network with 1 gigs for consumer needs. And then you can have a custom 1 gig between 2 buildings, but if you want to spread it and people go on their iPhones any place they want to bet, 1 gig will not do. So it has to be 20 megabits. And H.265 does not, it's 400 milliseconds. So it has to be next generation non-temporal. So the one that do not take into account difference between frames, all intra-frame compression.
Hey, Mike, let me touch on, if I could, breach on one other topic that I find interesting, and I'm sure people want to know. The HDMI compliance test specification is finally, I guess, out and out to manufacturers such as yourselves. Where are you guys standing with that? And do you see 2.1 products coming out soon?
We actually first we'll bring up cables out, 8K 2.1 cables. It's coming out very quickly. We're almost done with it. It's going to be out soon. I think the next step up will be extenders, but that's still waiting for some technology that's not readily available in a cost that we need in that tech. So what I see with 8K is either direct copper cable or fiber cable. Fiber cable can be a longer 8K cable than copper cable, and could use it. Now extenders is going to still rely on something that's not yet available because extender means that you have to pack 8K into a twisted pair, and that means 48G into less than 10G, or about 10G of a copper cable bandwidth. It means you need 5-to-1 cheap, low-cost compression to work really well. So it's doable, but I don't know how much investment will be done in that space in order to create that kind of a chip. So if that chip is created, then this kind of chips already enabled 4K into the standard HD-based T connectivity with 10G per twisted pair. So extender. Extender was a 4K extender is now readily available because the compression chips like this 2-to-1 became readily available. So we're going to wait for this 4-to-1, 5-to-1 compression chips for the 8K 2.1 to end up in extenders, switchers, distribution amps, and all other connectivity devices. That probably another year, or if not more. That's my opinion. But we're watching it, and we actually is going to be very quickly out with cables, and that gives you sort of future proof. If you need to wire your home with 8K, you can use cables that we're going to make. And as soon as the 8K compressions chips are available, we can real time, not expensive, high quality. Then we can make extender as well.
When you say cables you're gonna make, when you talk about the fiber optic HDMI cables?
Yes, we're gonna make fiber and copper. Copper
Okay.
for short length, and fiber because 48G does not run on copper more than 2 meters. You can do more than 6 feet. It really doesn't work.
That's
so you
it.
need fiber to go beyond 6 feet.
So then the source has to be at the display.
Well, you can use fiber going even up to 300 feet. That's not a problem.
Okay.
If you use fiber, you can go very long distances with 8K. Because
Okay.
Fiber does not really degrade the data.
So, but outside of speed and sports betting, like you was just referencing, because there's a company that deployed about, I don't know, 35, 36 televisions, somewhere along those guidelines in Hoboken and Jersey City because of sports betting. It's a company out of Switzerland. And basically they do all of the games. They show the games, the schedule and everything on there. And every television that I put up was vertical, similar to this. And they have these Wi-Fi devices. It's a little like I'm not sure if it's Linux, something, there's a pump going off in the background. Can you guys hear that or no?
No, it's good.
Really.
Thank God. Yes, it's a pump. It's an air compression pump for the carpenter. He's doing something over there. And everything's on there. Their menus on there. I'll show you some images later. Pictures of their food, pictures of ads and sports betting. So just like you're saying, in the near future, eventually, if somebody gets to bet on Tiger Woods making that putt within the next 4 minutes, 4 seconds, or whatever it is, then I absolutely see that coming. And the deployment that I've already done is in that direction, but it's wireless already. It's like an Apple TV. And once you connect it to the television, that's all they're looking for, which goes back to Wi-Fi, no matter which way we look at it, just getting the signal. And at that point, it doesn't have to be 4K. It doesn't have to be 8. But what if it is? And there's a location in Manhattan on a rooftop that's doing it exclusively because they have the technology to stream 8K content, so you can bet on this game right now. Get me started.
Yeah, what we discussed now, which is very interesting, is that current compression technology will always offer you about half a second delay between the time that something happens and it registered on your retina. So I know from stock exchange people who trade on Wall Street, even 10 millisecond, 20 millisecond, forget about half a second, but 20, 30 millisecond delays do make lose a lot of money the way the networks run. So I think gamblers, I don't know how sensitive that is for gamblers to place their bet and what kind of a delay they really need. But if the 400 millisecond delay is critical, then this won't work. The current tech will not give them a really real-time betting. It will be non-real time. So maybe it's very interesting to see it, but I'm not sure if it's going to work. I think there's a need for real-time connectivity here with very low delay.
I could 100% see that in the medical field. You know what I mean? If somebody was doing some type of remote KVM or something monitoring that, so it's a difference between somebody cutting an artery and doing something else. So I could see that, more intense 8K application, the bandwidth situation. It's interesting, but on the
I
gambling,
think, Scott, I think what we recently put out this MMS system for medical application, which uses
Correct.
AV over IP. That is real time.
Yep.
So if somebody wants to use what we're using now, Zoom or a standard video conferencing system, that system has delay of 200, 300, 400 milliseconds. So it's, I don't think even in that medical application, that's too long, because 400 milliseconds one way, 400 milliseconds back, that's already 1 second from the time the nurse can take action. Well, maybe say 1 second is not enough, but if she only has 10 seconds to do something, that 1 second is huge. So maybe she needs to reset some equipment remote, but that means this 1 second could be crucial for that patient. So I think there's a lot of applications that's going to demand real time. I think we touched something today that's really interesting, you know, as far as real time AV over IP. I think that is probably has its own, by its own, a very interesting market segment in a sense, time sensitive applications.
If something is
always in a church, just in some other environment.
Right, but also if something is always open, like a window, and like, you know, let's just say in a nurse's environment where that 1 second is absolutely crucial. It's everything. And I can't think of a better way to put it, because let's just look at it like a window that's constantly connected. Like if you walk to your window and your neighbor's house is right next to you and that's where it's happening, you just open the window and you talk, right? Similar when it comes down to this, whereas instead of missing that 1 millisecond, you always have that connection constant. So it never goes away for it to reconnect.
I think
however,
right,
keeping that connection, right? But you got to be able to see it. And I'm just going to go back to something really quick over here, because even though, you know, what we're talking about Marty McFly, Back to the Future, immediate connectivity not happening, we're going to have some sort of issue. But even looking at this, just this one right here, right? This is a dashboard from one of my access points, right? Hold on, let me just bring it over here. Just to see, right here, I'm just gonna go to my outdoor bar access point, right? And just keeping up with the heartbeat of your connection every single time is important. And like right now, that's why I stand by these type of tools, because I can troubleshoot and see things immediately, or as fast as possible, should I say. So I'm just right here, you know, this is giving me just a diagram of what that heartbeat is on that access point, what its location is, what the name of the Wi-Fi is, and being able to see certain things on that specific AP. And I know that's what I say, that wireless aspect is coming. It's not here, it's coming, but being able to have that window always open in an environment where it's not off. And if it's off, you're going to know it. How do you get it right back on?
Right.
You know, like, that's where that 1 second comes in.
Which is it enabling you, AV over IP enabling you to go to your customers more consistently with some sort of a service agreement?
I could go to my customer with a cape on my back, because I know when I show up with this product, they're going to be very happy that I'm the one who bought it to them, because it works. And that's the thing, like when you stand on something because you know it works, it's simple. And, you know, and especially when you're talking to somebody who's coming to adhere to you as an expert on advice, I tend to spend a lot of money on technology to keep up. And I have to, me specifically, because I have to have or know what the best is now. I don't want to learn of it later through someone else.
Yeah, but does that open the door for you to say, look, I'm going to keep this network up running all the time. I'm going to be here in a moment's notice and get a recurring revenue service agreement, like, hey, pay me monthly, pay me quarterly, pay me an annual service agreement, and I'm going to maintain this network for you.
I would say that is the ultimate goal. However, in different scenarios, existing infrastructures are already there, especially in restaurants or a hotel or a church. They have some sort of back office initially. So yes, to come in as a service to do that is one thing, and it would technically be the goal on a deployment aspect, yes. But when they already have an existing infrastructure and we're adapting to it or we're expanding it, they might already have their own department that touches it, should I say, or will be responsible for it. However, the real goal is to have them call you once a month, not once a week. And if it's once a month, it's just because you tell them to reboot the system or dust off some dust on the fan because the system works. And go ahead, I'm listening.
I was going to say, I'm with Jason on this one. I have so many dealers out there, and they do, reoccurring, revenue. So they have their like peace of mind, guarantee. So they'll charge, like yourself between having all the tools. I mean, we know there's so many other programs out there. Either a product itself could have their own, some of the other bigger companies, you have Overseer and stuff like that, where guys can go through, troubleshoot, reboot, etc., without rolling a truck. But at the same time, having a quarterly, reoccurring revenue coming in and saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to make sure your network's always up. I'm going to supply all the latest and greatest security and firmware updates, 100%, because AV over IP, now you're on a network switch. You have firmware updates. Our products have firmware updates. I'm 100% like teaching dealers or mentioning that so many people just don't. And it's like, wait a minute, you're going there and not doing this? How do you know it's up to date?
Yeah, the IP offers the possibility to go and look at the network, see who's connected, how's alive, all the items are. I think it's a good selling point because, especially, Butch, just to tell you something, I was experiencing something when the customer was really, really pissed that he has to call his dealer every week and he has to pay. It was I don't know, I'm not going to mention competitor brand name, but that guy has to come every week and fix that equipment, and he charged him $500, $600, $700 every week. The customer got so annoyed by that that when the dealer like you would come in there and make you make very reliable products that requires very little maintenance. You amazing dealer, but it's a good idea, especially go on the tail of that guy who really screwed up and have very unreliable stuff. You can charge maintenance fee. They already paid maintenance fee to that guy, $1,000.
Yeah, you're right. And
$1,000 for 6 months.
If that's the model, I understand when it comes down to deployment and then doing it for a maintenance aspect of it or the business aspect of maintenance on a system that you deploy. I get that. And I do that in a different instance already. And here goes some of my networks already that I can see right here. Everything that's green is online. And I can administer what I need to do. However, this is on a computer, email, printing, Wi-Fi, surveillance cameras, stuff along those guidelines. And I can drill in, just even looking at what went offline and so on and so forth. So having those tools are here. It's just that on the AV over IP aspect of that, right? To administer that or maintenance that, should I say, it's something that over AV over IP, you can do that now. And especially if you have a surveillance camera in the room, overlooking the room, which I do have right now. I could put on a camera right now and stream it on the system if I want to, just to show you. So when you log into your camera,
you're familiar with our MS system, the system for the hospitals, right?
Yes. I am. I'm very familiar.
That system has a unit inside it that allows you to log in. We already made this system for a court, very similar system for a courthouse that allows you to use the system internally, externally. So you can log into that system and you can do whatever you need to do, maintenance, upgrade, check, and log out, assuming that the customer allows you to do that.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a firewall.
Yeah, but when you put it in a package,
that maintenance.
So then hold on, that little black box Scott was talking about, right? When we put that in that little black box as a small extension, when it comes down to the maintenance aspect of it, and say, hey, listen, along with this install here, you have this option. We can put this black box over here, which allows us to see without coming and have access. It's an extension of maintenance because it gets pricey unless it's a requirement for it.
Right.
So, and in a lot of establishments, most scenarios, they already have camera systems. They already have an alarm system. They already have smoke detectors. They already have a kitchen. There's things that are already there. So
Right.
when we could use those things for the simple aspects, the simple stuff, right, without hindering what we're doing, makes us much simpler as long as we have the tools in the first place. So to answer the maintenance, I mean, I'm people going back to yes, we can if that's the model and what we're after, yeah. But when you're just deploying this, it's the simplest thing, yet the most
Yeah,
intricate and advanced system out.
but we want you to make more money, Butch. That's what we want to do.
Oh,
That's our
I'm
goal here.
then wait a second. All right, I'm making money, right? Is always a topic. Absolutely. However, functionality is what we're talking about on this live. If we're going to talk about money,
one thing I'm not speaking for Jason, but I think Jason, and you could agree with me, part of it going from a conventional matrix into an AV over IP system,
right,
or a network-based system, is a guaranteed service contract. If it was a conventional matrix, you were doing maybe your, every quarter checkup,
right.
you know what I mean, and stopping by unless you got a nasty phone call.
Yeah, I mean, Butch, you kind of both hit it on the head there. Butch, complexity is good to a certain extent because the customer doesn't understand it.
No.
And you are the person who makes it understandable and deciphers everything for them.
Right.
And they'll pay you for that. They're going to pay you for that.
They should want to, especially in this climate, look at the year. It's 2020, 2021, and we're still talking about HD switchers with balance when we already have IP distribution right now and it works. What? I don't even, it's such a no-brainer to a person that has to go through something to come out of it. Meaning on a Saturday night and the system doesn't work because the switcher breaks down or whatever it is, they have to be in that environment and climate and realize or remember the anxiety or the craziness, stress that they had. Because not only does the installer have that too to come and fix it, the person who's generating the revenue in the first place from opening that bar, from being in that situation or that invitation, and they can't deliver it based on the hardware that failed on them. So if we could remove that, and which we can with IP.
Yeah.
But it's price driven, Butch. I mean, the HDMI, small HDMI switcher still are very price competitive. It's very small installs. It's very hard to take them out. When AP over IP came wide and we started to promote it, and basically it was driven by the dealers, it was clearly very quickly that 8x8 switch is the largest HDMI switch we need, because everything above 8x8, people automatically went for AV over IP. It makes much more sense.
I was going to ask you that, Mike. You think there'll always be an application for analog for in these smaller configurations? You think analog will always have an application out there?
Not analog. I mean, it's still digital. It's like HDMI is still digital, but it's a small. Like for example, take a small consumer 2x2 matrix. You can make the whole thing for probably much less cost than you set up 2x2 IP AV over IP system. You have to have a network switch. You have to have 2 encoders, 2 decoders. Yeah, there's a lot of benefits to this, but if it's a non-commercial application, if it's a consumer application, I think, Scott, you would also you agree with me, right? That for small consumer applications, the 4x4, 8x8, 4x4 basically switches are dominating, right? When you need a small matrix.
Yeah, I mean, that's tons of between our regular switchers, matrix. I'm actually kind of amazed at how many people, do-it-yourselfers, whatever you want to call it, that could efficiently buy like one of our 4x4s and do their own little video wall in their house. Right. Because with our KD app that's free, it's on a network to be able to go through and control it. So I'm in agreement with you, Mike. But one thing I wanted to, as we've been going for a while here, is one thing I wanted to throw out there. Do any of us ever see, I mean, we probably all have one, but the composite video cable, yellow end, do we ever see twisted pair going away? You know what I mean? It's like, it's always going to be infrastructure, or are we going to go fiber versus, the composite video cable? I mean,
yeah, and that's gone. So it's like,
yeah, I mean,
it's gone. What's next? You know, just like when USB, first it was a serial connection on a computer. Before that, it was a Bernoulli connection. I'm going way back. And then USB, USB-A,
But do you
USB-B.
see
VGA,
fiber,
DVI,
fiber
DVD.
takes away twisted pair? Do you see that, or you see twisted pair dominating?
I see as long as twisted pair is working, it's dominating until something else makes it not work. Right now, if it works, you're running Ethernet no matter what.
Easy to terminate, cheap cable, all of this important.
Correct.
But if you look at the evolution of it, look how many things that have gone away.
Mm-hmm.
You know, S video. I still have one for, you know, a museum piece. But I mean, it's like, who has an S video output on anything?
Right.
It's so funny because so many things become retro again and come around.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we kind of got off topic on it, but you know, the evolution of twisted pair, I think is always going to be there. It's like coax, you know, RG59, RG6. I mean, there's probably not a house out there today that doesn't have at least one piece of coax in it.
Right.
You know?
Right. Coax. Yeah, you got a very valid point. But you know, but to topic off topic where we're going all in the same direction every single time we talk.
Yeah.
And just, you know, the delivery installation aspect of what we're deploying here, Ethernet is not going anywhere. It's enhancing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see what you're saying in terms of the speed of fiber, but I do not see it as of this moment, should I say, taking intricate aspects to install fiber and thread it through and being careful that you don't go over a 90-degree angle inside of a tube to get to one TV. An uplink, yeah. If you're jumping from the basement to the 9th floor or something like that, okay, we can get that in there. But to do fiber to every television or every extender, nah. I don't see that.
Scott, I think the bigger issue is what Butch was mentioning earlier. Is I think so many people think it's just going to go wireless eventually. That's what I think is where everybody's minds, you know, you talk to home builders. I talked to home builders for 10 years about why they didn't put infrastructure wiring in a home is because it's all going to be wireless.
But it's not entirely, or should I say
Exactly.
This part isn't. This part isn't. The TV part is not, the display part is not wireless yet until you put on an Apple TV. But even when you put on an Apple TV, it's still Ethernet. So, but is it capable of working over Wi-Fi? Yes, it is. So, but that's what I say. It's once that the compression that you're talking about, Mike, and the one that I'm thinking of is something that's probably 10 years away or 12 years away.
It's hard to make those predictions, but all of us identified some of the really interesting here applications. I think first of all, the reliable wireless. I agree. If that would be there, it would be great. Real-time compression, you know, non-delayed with low bit rate. Also, it's definitely very, very, very attractive and sexy for the future. I think this kind of things that is very, very nice. Guys, we're already 1 hour, 20 minutes in it.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate your I don't want to abuse your hospitality. I want to call you again, if possible, if you don't mind. Maybe we'll do it like, I don't know, once a month. Scott, what do you think? Once or 2 months?
Yeah, we could do that bi-weekly or something like that. I mean, one thing I'm just going to go back.
It depends on those guys. If they have time, we have to be
exactly. But I mean, I almost lost my train of thought.
Making time. Yeah, I want to bring you guys on my installations. Like I have another one in Brooklyn that I'm doing, and I would love for you guys to come and see it. Just sit on the camera and I'll just be running around connecting cables.
Do you think everybody would be in agreement here of thinking that to get these real-time connections and everything else, it has to be some type of hardline connection?
Yeah, for sure.
Regardless, so some type of infrastructure, you know, hardline application is going to exist. And then one thing, we were talking about gambling before, Jason. One thing I thought of that is still shocks me to this day is the gaming industry, which is a $1 billion industry. And there we go. We're talking milliseconds between somebody, missing a headshot in like a wartime simulation game. And these kids, I hate saying kids, but some of those generations are getting paid
Mhm.
insane amount of money.
To play.
Yeah.
You know? And these are all hardline connections. You would never want to play that. You know,
Yeah,
something
you
like
can't.
that. $1 million on the line and you're playing Wi-Fi. You know,
No,
it's like,
not
hey,
happening.
it'll never happen.
No, not happening. That's not.
Yeah.
That's not happening.
Yeah, and 20 milliseconds is real time because
Yeah.
each successive frames is about 30 milliseconds apart. So there's no video in between 20 milliseconds. That's why 25 milliseconds is real time for all concerned purposes.
There's nothing in between it. Wow, that's amazing. But wait a second. Are you signing off because you guys have to go? Or
Yeah.
I just don't want to abuse your
Part of that
hospitality.
is,
You know?
I mean, hey, I was excited to be on a call with Jason. I followed Jason
Yeah.
for years, all the articles that you've written and everything else. So, I mean, I feel honored to be on here with you,
Nice,
Jason, personally, you know, but I didn't want to take too much time. I know Mike has a busy plate. We all have a busy plate. It is a Monday.
Yeah.
We're working with the wrath of the weekend
Mhm.
and kind of going from there. But I mean, I appreciate everybody's time on this and try to
Definitely.
go through to do this again.
And we'll try
And,
it again. And
Thanks for having me. I'll do it. Let's do it again. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you all, Butch. Thanks,
Such a
Jason.
pleasure, guys.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right,
Thanks.
talk to you.
Bye.
All right, thanks, guys.
Bye.
All right.